everything's so nice and clean. It's such a pleasure. For those of you who are looking for a bit of an update as to lion movements, now the Nkuhumas crossed out of our property and they have not yet been relocated. They went, as far as I know, they went north and then east towards Torchwood. And what's interesting is that there is a sort of a collective group for all of the guides of the area to keep in contact with their various sightings and update people as to where animals are. And there are 3 unknown male lions that are moving down further south, much further south from Gowrie, Maine. And it's strongly suspected that those are some of the Birmingham boys. Now, for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, the Birmingham boys are a young male coalition who've only just moved into this area and pushed the dominant 2 males that were here out of their territory. But it seems as though they are pushing further afield now. Stop and try and get a view of this particular little bird. Stop here, otherwise I think he's going to fly away. BM, do you think you can get him? Awesome. Now I know this is a bird that may have been fairly regularly seen by the more regular viewers, but for some of our new viewers, if you want to start working on your bird list, which was introduced by one of the other presenters, I believe it was introduced by Scott, this is a magpie shrike, or a long-tailed shrike. And it's a very, very pretty little bird, and it's responsible for those little whistles and chirps that you can hear. And with most birds, as with most birds of the shrike family, it is one that is a carnivore or a predator, and it will go out hunting insects. And the reason I actually really wanted to stop and look at this beautiful little bird is it poses, or it's created, an interesting question in my mind, and one that I don't have an answer to. I'm just putting it out there for you. Now, in most birds that have long tails, as these do, it is only the male that has the long tail, and only in breeding season, because it is such an evolutionary disadvantage. It's an extra weight, it's clumsy, it's slower in terms of movement and escaping predators. And yet, with the magpie shrikes, or these long-tailed shrikes, both the males and the females have long tails throughout the year, not just their breeding season. Now, I haven't yet managed to find an answer as to why it is that they've evolved like this in my own mind, but it's one of those wonderful things to sit and question. And it's that an awesome part of being out here and experiencing it is no matter how much we know and how much we learn, we are never going to know everything about what we're seeing. And it's nice to just think about some of the questions that we may never have answers to. And on the subject of questions that we never have answered to, we had a little bit of a cameo experience with the walking backpack this morning. when we realized that we didn't necessarily need Wendy in order to be out and about. And at the moment, Scott and Brent are out exploring the wilderness on foot, and I believe that they have things to show you. So I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Hello everyone and welcome on a very tame bushwalk. My name is Brent Leo Smith and I have the individual Henry on camera with me. So what we've decided, and I know there's been such a lovely focus on the rain, and that's happened in a nice early rain, even though I think it's a bit early for a lot of the frog species and stuff, we've decided to come to one of these little pans and show you what's here and what might possibly be here in a few days once it warms up. And a lot of the frog and insect like have not quite managed to get rid of the winter funk, but there's some tiny little insects in here that we had a look at. And I mean, the rain finished yesterday at
1600 hours.
There we go, James, 1600 hours, and already there is blue-green algae growing on the base of this. So I mean, it's just this tiny, and a tiny little layer of algae already growing. So obviously it's been lying dormant during the winter months, and just that little bit of rain and life is exploding. But these little pans like this, and this is a little wallow, probably started by something like a warthog, a little depression, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and I've actually even seen a buffalo lying in this exact one. But they will become, especially a little grassed pan like this, will become a really great habitat for quite a lot of little frog species. And I think one of my favorites we're going to find in here is the golden leaf folding frog. Said so, obviously this is very not great golden leaf folding frog grass yet, but once it greens up, there's a specific grass species that does grow in these aquatic habitats. It's called jungle rice, and it's got almost tiger stripes over it. And the golden leaf folding frog take those quite broad leaves and they'll actually fold them and lay their eggs inside there as a little protective case over the water, so they are able to then protect their tadpoles, and when they hatch they will drop straight into the water. So really fascinating. Another one we might find around here is, well, I know a lot of our favorites, and that is the bubbling casina, and they have a wonderful sort of bubbling, that's the best way to describe it. Maybe James can give us an impression. Not quite like that. A bit more musical. And they are incredible ventriloquists. So you often try to find them when you go frogging, and they're actually a very pretty frog. We'll try to show you some pictures just now. And you will think they're calling from this exact spot, and they could be calling from the opposite end of the pan. James has found something.
No, I'm just showing where the bubbling casino might be calling from.
And apart from that, we're going to get lots of little insects in here, water boatmen, water scorpions, and obviously the tadpoles that'll come. And we're going to walk on to a slightly different type of pan now. And as I said, well, we don't have a firearm. We don't have a firearm with us, so we're going to walk a little bit further from the car, but we are still staying with the vehicle. The reason we don't have a firearm with us is because we're not walking very far. And the reason we normally do carry firearms on full bush walks is because James is not able to escape with that large backpack on his back. And here we have some crested francolins.
That's nice. Sorry about the focus, everybody. The camera is picking up.
There we go.
There we go.
And nice low angle on the francolins, not something we get too often from the vehicles.
Beautiful.
Very nice. Feeding on all the grass seeds. And if we had to stand up quite quickly now, they would probably get a fright and scatter off, but they are coming right up to us at the moment.
Look at that.
They're coming right up to us. I don't think they've realized that we are the dominant diurnal predator yet.
I don't think they have, Brent. This is amazing. This is fantastic. I've just got to excuse the jerk on my triceps. Oh, I'm suffering slightly, so I need to sit down. There we go.
The backpack is about the same size as James.
Yes. Look at this. These little things are so close to us.
Can you even hear their little contact calls, just checking where each other are?
This is so cool. They're probably about 6.5 feet from us. Close by. I don't think the microphone's picking up that doot-doot, doot-doot. Yes, that's so cool. Look at the colours. Beautiful colours.
There's one off to the right. It's almost heading right into us. Oh, changed direction.
Well, changed his angle, certainly.
Incredibly pretty little birds. Well, actually quite big birds. So for you guys up in the northern hemisphere, if you're in Europe, the closest thing to a francolin for you guys would be probably a grouse. And I think you do get grouse in the Americas as well.
You do get pretty grouse.
There we go. And these are probably our African equivalent, although we do have quite a few species of them in various different sizes, and these guys are sort of the medium.
This is probably the best francolin sighting I've ever had.
I have to agree with you. Oh, something stuck in the throat there. And so, even though it's winter, they're going to be feeding off all the grass seeds that haven't managed to embed themselves in the soil.
And the odd insect,
yes,
of course, if they can find it.
And we'll often find them digging through buffalo dung and elephant dung to try to find said insect.
And now coming out into the open, I'm going to have to move. That scraping noise is the enormous backpack, of course. This is magnificent.
Coming up the road towards us at the moment. There's one actually coming up behind us. We are being surrounded, James.
I think we're being stalked. Look at this thing. It's right next to us now.
Right. It's amazing what just sitting still when we're talking.
Unbelievable.
So, and they're actually aware that we're here.
This is so special. This really is so special.
Not always about the big hairies and scaries. That is
Yeah,
probably
fella.
less than That closest one was less than 2 feet from James's foot. And there's one going into that buffalo dung, but he's going away from it.
Okay, everybody, I have to move.
There we go. So, we had a couple of questions there while we were with those Franklin. And we're going to deal with the Djums first. And Djums was about dung beetles. Are we going to see any soon, and what type of dung do they like? Well, Djum, there's many thousand species of dung beetle. And in this area, I'd say they're actually like most dung. I've seen them on giraffe dung, I've seen them on impala dung. I think the favorite is probably buffalo and rhino and elephant. And we've got a buffalo patch here that is quite old. It's actually been, maybe not by dung beetles, but definitely broken up by birds looking for other sorts of insects that might be feeding in it. You can actually even see some of the bird dung on the buffalo dung, so a multi-dung patch.
And Jim, I also went on a little walk today and found something called a carrion beetle, which has a similar strategy to the dung beetle, and they will go to lion dung and that sort of thing, and they will live underneath it. Or they'll lay their eggs underneath it, and they come out after the rain. And there were 3 or 4 little ones next to an ancient, aging, white, and still fairly smelly lion dung today. So I'm sure the dung beetles are going to come.
As you're thinking about it, I don't think it's a dung beetle. I think it still might be a little bit cold, but there is a beetle that's been living under this elephant dung, and at the moment he's playing dead. But I'm quite sure. There we go. Now he's becoming quite alive. And it is not a dung beetle. I'm actually not 100% sure what beetle that is. James?
I don't know, to be honest.
But I think this beetle was probably using the elephant dung for shelter more than food.
Yeah.
So hiding there, and
sorry, excuse the focus, everybody. It's struggling to pick it up.
I'm going to go a bit further back.
No, that's fine.
And you can actually see how the termites, that are at some stage, have got into this elephant dung. As well,
I'll try
the little tunnels.
I'm going to try and zoom in on it, everybody, but I think, there we go, it's working. There we go. That's it. That's the best we're going to get. That's the best we're going to get, I'm afraid.
Okay, and let's put him down. Let's put him back and put the elephant dung back on top, so a hornbill doesn't eat him on our behalf. But our second question was from Tyler, who's age 12, and that was to do with frogs. So we're going to move on, Tyler, to the next mud wallow. And we can see this is a much bigger wallow, and one that I know the buffalo of this area frequent. So this, from a frog point of view, is possibly not the best type of wallow. You can see there's no grass around it, no nice vegetation for them to hide in, and obviously the buffalo being in and out of it is probably quite disruptive. But we would definitely find terrapins in this wallow once it gets a little bit warmer. I think a lot of the stuff's going to come out in a couple of weeks once it's a bit warmer. But Tyler, you asked us how many frogs there are here. Well, Tyler, I'm afraid I can't give you an exact answer, but I'm guessing probably around 50. Well, James and I are disagreeing on this. I'm going to go probably between 25 and 50 species, but we will actually have a proper look and let you guys know. I'm just trying to think of the ones I know well, and I can count. I think we've got at least 4 different types of toads. Weve got African bullfrog, golden leaf folding frog, tremolo sand frog, knocking sand frog, bushveld rain frog, Mozambique rain frog. So what have we got? 11 now.
Yeah.
Water lily reed frog.
Casinas.
2 red-backed and bubbling casinas. So that's 14. Oh, and I know
Banded rubber.
Banded rubber, dwarf puddle frog,
Platana.
3 different species of platana, frog,
Yes.
water lily. I've said that one. But we will actually have a proper look and let you guys know.
Probably close to 25.
It's generally
Yes.
I'm hoping there's a few more.
Now, Brent, what I would like you to do is demonstrate the toothbrush tree for us. Would you mind doing that?
I've done this in a while. The last time I did it, we happened to go on Arethusa after there's a big fire. I've actually fortunate enough to have a toothpaste as well.
The tree called?
It is Guari Euclea divinorum. And the reason it's called divinorum, it's actually used traditionally for to find underground water sources, and actually as another thing, it is used to place in during the summer season, the rainy season, when the thunders start, and traditionally believed to protect from lightning.
Lightning before?
I've never put it in my but I've never tried lightning.
Yeah.
Well, not a bit of the scrape off a bit of the bark like that. It's quite a long tooth, and it's fun to me.
Into the bush.
Fortunately, I live the man. Makes it a lot easier. As you can see, there's not much bone and flint around the spots at the very moment. So break it up. It becomes very deeply if you chew on it. You chew. There goes my red.
There's the bristles.
And you can see it becomes very bristly. A little bit harsher than the standard toothbrush we use. But the bit of lead wood that very effective.
Have you used lead wood ash for? Does it work?
And it doesn't nearly as bad as I was expecting it to. It actually pretty much tastes like nothing, but there's definitely a sort of it definitely feels like it doesn't feel dirty in your mouth. And when you have to get checked by the lead, I've already done it. Okay. So guys, thank you for joining us in our brief interlude around the pans. I'm going to cross back to Jenny, and we will try and find something else interesting for you guys a little later.
Welcome back, and I do hope you enjoyed your time with Brent and James out on bushwalk. Whoop, and up into the tree. And that bird that I was talking about earlier that was alarm calling, the grey go-away birds. And there you can hear one shouting just to the left of us, and we've got this one who's cooperating beautifully. This is, for any of our new viewers, a grey go-away bird, named for that distinctive call. Go away! Go away! And they've got very, very keen eyes. And that sound that they produce is very, very useful because they will shout at the various predators who move through. But they will also give your position away. If they spot humans walking in the bush, they will tell you to go away and alert whatever you are following to your presence. And I've had that happen several times while I've been walking through the bush and trying to sneak up on something. We are currently on our way to Buffelshoek Dam to see, first of all, if Bob the Bachelor of Buffelshoek, the hippo, is around, but also just to see if anything's moving around in that area. Just before I went on leave, there were a couple of sightings of a mystery male leopard that none of us, to the best of our knowledge, have ever seen before, and I'm really, really keen to see him. I haven't seen him yet. Let's head out in that direction and see what we can find. just going through a bit of a muddy patch. Thought it might be prudent to just shift into low range as we make our way through. Somebody's just trying to call me on the Game Drive channel. Let me just respond. Standing by, Craig. To be more adapted to hiding away in thick foliage where a short tail is more advantageous. And Kathleen pointed out that maybe because there are so many black or dark colored stripes, it helps them tell each other apart. Also a valid observation, although there are so many different types of light colored stripes as well. I'm not too sure about that. Still a very interesting question, and amazing to think that we probably will never know the answer to that. Now I've just spotted, on the subject of adaptations to environments, just spotted a rather long-necked mammal, going from long tails to long necks, quite far on the other side of Buffelshoek Dam, but we'll see if we can get a nice view of him. Just want to double check the dam properly first. And we have an aquatic mammal as well. Welcome to Buffelshoek Dam, which is in the northeastern corner of Djuma Game Reserve. And we have, first of all, I was talking a little bit about a long-necked mammal. There is one right on the other side of the dam. Here we go, perfect. We've got both of them in shot. To the right of your screen, there is what looks to be quite a solid male giraffe, quite a large male. And in the dam is Bob the Bachelor of Buffelshoek, a hippo that is fairly regularly seen here. It's really very beautiful here at this time of the day, with the light as it is. Go, the big male giraffe munching on what looks like, what is that? It's flowering. Could well in this area be one of the bush willow species. And I could tell it was a male giraffe immediately on seeing it, and that was partly due to the bulge underneath the stomach. Let me just double check that I'm right before I start chattering away. Nope, definitely a bull. And mainly the size as well. It's quite a tall giraffe. I know that sounds rather silly, but the males are noticeably larger than the females. And then, although his head is currently tucked in a tree, the ossicones, or the horns on top of his head, are rubbed bald from fighting with each other, or fighting with other males. And they're much thicker and more solid than those of the females. And the reason I wanted to draw attention to him as an evolutionary example is that early on in sort of evolutionary science, people believed that it was a feeding adaptation that had caused giraffe to get this really, really long neck. And there's actually now competing theories that state that it's a competitive advantage with other males. So in the way that some antelope have evolved really, really large horns, like the kudu, to fight off potential suitors and claim the females for themselves, giraffe have evolved a really long neck, and they use that as a way of fighting, and they'll swing that head at the end of the neck and hit each other with those solid horns at the top of their head. And the suggestion is a comparison that was made between the dinosaurs like the Diplodocus with the very, very long necks, And evolutionary scientists started to suggest that it might be a competitive advantage. And James is just trying to get me on the Game Drive channel, so bear with me for 1 second. I will continue that thought. Standing by. I'm currently at Buffelshoek Dam. Copy that, thank you. I was thinking about making my way towards the Misikai now. And a really nice, tranquil setting in this late afternoon light. And as always, there is well, not as always, but quite frequently, a regular visitor to Buffelshoek Dam is this male hippo. Now, typically hippo will live in large pods or rafts together in dams with one dominant bull with a group of females and younger males. And it could well be that this is either an older male who can no longer compete with the younger dominant males, or it is a young male who's just been pushed out by some of the older dominant males. Looking at him in just his size, I would say it's more likely that he's an older male. He is sometimes joined by a female, who I believe has been given the name Princess Daisy. She doesn't seem to be here at the moment. He does seem to be quite content in his solitude here at Buffelshoek Dam. Now, he will be waiting for the sun to go down before he starts heading out to graze around the area. And he can move almost up to 10 kilometers in one night away from the dam and go out and graze, and then return back to his place of sanctuary in the morning. So he can move quite happily between dams if he does want to go out and seek some company, which he probably will do over the next few days. And the nice thing is for the hippos is that with this early rain, the dams will get a little bit bigger and there's less social pressure. They're not as on top of each other all the time as they would have been in the dry season. So it's a good time to be a hippo. And the one thing about being the cloudy days that we've had over the last sort of 3 or 4 days since I got back here, this is actually probably the first proper blue sky that I've seen since I've been back at work. And it's always very important if you are walking in the bush to remember that although hippos during the day are going to come and spend their time in the dam, on cold, cloudy days, they're much happier and much more content to spend that little bit of extra time in the morning or come out a little bit earlier in the afternoon. And I have in the past encountered on cold, cloudy days hippos in completely random places, at one time more than a kilometer away from water at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And that was just because it was nice and cool. So always really, really important to remember that. Now I do want to start heading across towards the hyena den and see if there's any action happening on that side. And since I need to have a little bit of time to get there fairly quickly because somehow the darkness has caught up with me, I believe that Brent and James have an interesting encounter that they have with the walking backpack on Nyala Road South. So I'm going to send you across to them with their Dugger boys, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
Welcome back everyone. James and I are on the vehicle, as you can see, and I'm sure since we have the bushwalk backpack, a few of you are wondering why, and that is because we are surrounded by a group of Duggar boys, or African buffalo, Cape buffalo, but it is a bachelor group, and they can be quite cantankerous from time to time. And since we are not carrying a rifle with us at the moment, we're not going to try walk into them, and especially not at this time of the day as the light's getting a bit lower. So we're actually surrounded by them at the moment. They're down in the drainage line below us, and they're going to start moving as it's quite cold now, away from these drainage line areas up to one of the crests. And the theory that warm air rises is animals definitely know that, and you'll find these old boys up on the higher parts of the crests while it's cold, so they can keep a bit warmer during the night, like an old man's blanket. It's always good to sit and listen for a little bit. While you're sitting quietly with an animal, you never know what you might hear. It could be the bark of a kudu and a nyala to let you know that there's a leopard around. We would be most grateful for that at the moment, since we've covered the majority of Arathusa and Djuma without a leopard or lion track for a while. Hopefully tomorrow morning that will change. They'll be definitely quite happy with that little rain that happened. Definitely less they have to move between food and water. Not that these old boys move too far as it is. And as you can see, after James and I went off on our debut solo filming expedition to Tuli, we have decided we are now
experts.
I wasn't going to go that far, but budding filmmakers, and shall take every opportunity to prove so.
Now, one thing you must understand, everybody, is that we might like to move a bit forward, but we can't do that, of course, because well, first of all, I'm filming and driving, so I might Brent Leo Smith into a drainage line, and that would be the end of that, or a buffalo. And the second thing is, of course, that the signal on this bushwalk backpack was only sort of viable at slow speeds, slow walking speeds. So we're going to sit right here with these magnificent old fellows who are in the twilight of their days.
I had an interesting question this morning on the sunrise safari that someone had heard from a guide on safari recently that these old boys were actually in their prime and were breeding males, and they just waited for the female to come to them. Unfortunately, as I said, that guide was telling you little white lies, and the majority of these guys are well past prime. You will find the odd young buffalo bull sometimes will spend some time with boys, will generally move back into the herd when he feels he's strong enough to challenge for a breeding position.
Brent, some would say white liar, some might say foul and contemptible untruth.
Yes, well, that is very true. I was trying to be diplomatic for once. And I think if James had been his assessor when he was training guides back in the day, that guide might have found himself out of a job.
Okay, I think that's more that, and then we'll try a bit forward, maybe.
Well, we can attempt. I can hold the camera. So as we look at these old boys, Leanne's wondering how good their vision is, and do they see better in the daytime. So buffaloes have relatively good vision. I wouldn't say they're eagle-eyed like an impala or a kudu, but bad vision. Obviously, as they get into their twilight years, their vision, as well as hearing and other things, will probably start decreasing. And they can definitely see much better in the daytime. Buffalo do make our 4x4s look quite useless when they go straight through the bushes. They have to do it a lot quieter than we do as well.
Just quickly, what you can see there, everybody, is the fact that, and this is not to find a point on it, that point about these being prime bulls is conclusively disproved by the vision you currently have of what is an scrotum that is no longer functional. You can see that his testicles are not anything like those of a prime bull. If you see a prime bull in a herd, they are large and hanging down. And of course, once a buffalo passes the age where they become useful, he doesn't expend any more energy on maintaining them. Right, I'm afraid I think the buffalo...
So we're going to try something now. I'm going to sit across the bonnet, and we're going to go real first-person point of view camera work here. I can't go too far because of the length of the cable. We're going to try go a little bit, and oh dear, I'm mountains, and there we have James driving.
I'm not driving.
Yes, and we're going to go onwards towards the buffalo. Try stay with them a bit longer, and hopefully James doesn't get too distracted by a camera in front of him instead of behind him and go into the drainage line. Well, we're very close, and it happens to be on the only road next to the highest drop on the whole of Djuma. We can try have a look down. You can see it is probably a good 4.5 meter drop into the drainage line, but as you can see now, we're approaching amongst the buffalo again. So apparently our attempted drive first-person camera work attempt was not as good as we thought it was. So we're going to cross back to Jamie and see what she's been up to.
Welcome back, and I do hope you enjoyed your time with Brent, James and the other Duggar boys of Djuma. And I just wanted to stop here at the crest of the hill. I'm right on our northern boundary on Buffelshoek, and we do have quite a spectacular view. The amazing thing about this time, just after the first rains, is that it washes away all of the dust and the haze that's been hanging around during our dry season, and we get these spectacular sunsets, as well as the slight silhouette of the Drakensberg Mountains just peeking out over the top. And it really is absolutely beautiful out here. It's something that I like to stop and do on a fairly regular basis. It's just whenever I'm caught up somewhere going to do something, it's always important to stop and enjoy the scenery for a couple of moments. It just serves as a really healthy reminder as to exactly how much I really love being out here and enjoy the silence and the vast space of this area. And then of course, while you're having a deep moment like that, there is inevitably a fly that sits on your nose just to add to a different level of enjoyment to the whole experience. And now we shall continue on to our hyena den, which is not too far away. That usually lets us know that there is a flat tire on the vehicle. And it's not just a little bit flat, it is very, very flat, which is quite entertaining. And before I hop out and change it, which I am going to do, we are unfortunately on a bit of a slope, but with the tire this flat, I can't roll the car any further forward to a nice flat area, so we're going to have to look for some nice solid rocks to keep us from disappearing anywhere. So I think, given that the Wendell is currently down, it might be time to do a little bit of on-air tire changing, which could be highly entertaining for all. Now, before I do this, just because we were talking about this beautiful sunset, I know that Dennis has made a comment about how incredibly clear the bush is, and it absolutely is. The rain has washed away all of the dust, and it really is truly beautiful here. And it's a view that I'm going to sit and enjoy. Well, I'm going to enjoy whilst I change this particular flat tire. Now, it's very, very important that we make sure everything is pretty solid, because these cars are nice and light, so they do tend to tip forward as soon as they are jacked up. But I should have my trusty wheel spanner somewhere in the back here, in theory. Where is it? Down that side. Luckily, this is not the first tire I've ever changed in my life. Ah, it's very much attached to underneath the chair. Oh. The wheel spanner is very much trapped under the seat, so this might turn into a more complicated experience than we were expecting. Let's see. We can. So one advantage of being a girl out here in the bush is that my hands are much smaller, so I can quite possibly maneuver this out. Now, it's my understanding, no, this is very much wedged in, so I think our on-screen tire change might have to wait for a moment, because I really need to get in and take this seat up and apart before I can do anything. And in the meantime, I believe that Brent and James are now on standby to give us a helping hand here. So while I change my tire quickly, we're going to cut across to them, and I will be back with you. Oh, nope, they're not ready. So we're going to talk a little bit about the various changing tire experiences that I've had. So the most entertaining one was changing a tire with a leopard probably about 50 meters away. Luckily she was very relaxed, but this particular car had not the high lift jacks that we use for our vehicles, but a bottle jack, which requires sort of climbing under the car to get it up and levering it up. And while I've been describing that particular action, and I'll finish the story, the
beauty, smell,
ignored us completely as we changed the tire, which was very fortunate for the other vehicles involved in that sighting. And now that I've passed the time with that short story about my tire changing experiences, Brent
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, James and I are now at the end of a tough day at the office. So we've decided to come sit on the high ground here on a road called Drakensberg, and that's specifically because there is such a long view to the Drakensberg mountains behind me, and the sun is going down, and it is definitely, most of us who live in the bush, our favourite time of the day.
Sorry, excuse my moving. Keep going.
And after the rains, the smells have definitely changed a bit. It's almost a clean and fresh smell compared to the dust. I'm not sure which one I prefer. I quite like the dry weather. It makes tracking a lot easier. We've got some wonderful birds calling around us. Crested franklin, and I know one of James's favourites was calling just before we went live. A little pearl-spotted owlet. What else can we hear? Grey go-away birds. Wah! Doesn't quite fit the beautiful vista behind us. A raucous call of a grey go-away bird.
Beautiful. Not my filming, everybody. My filming isn't very beautiful, but the picture behind us is just magnificent.
And we can see the last of that cold front. That disappearing, going to make someone else wet. Brian actually showed me a satellite picture of what that cloud bank looked like. It literally covered more than half of South Africa. And unfortunately it's gone to the west. And I can't wait for it to start warming up myself.
I think we have a question coming through, but I'm not sure it's...
We did have a very, very special on foot, or actually on bottom, franklin sighting. James and I were sitting in the road, and this little covey of crested franklin surrounded us almost, or stalked us. And Gail was wondering, well, where do they nest, and do we ever see their babies? So, Gail, they actually are ground nesters, so they nest in little thickets and little patches of grass, and we will be definitely seeing their babies. And their babies are incredibly cute. They are tiny, 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 tiny. And sometimes I've seen up to 9 franklin babies in one group, but not all to one mother. But unfortunately they do get picked off quite frequently by predatory birds and mongoose, and even leopards occasionally. But quite a few of them do make it to adulthood. So hopefully we will be seeing quite a few of them. And I think for me the cutest of all the baby franklins is probably one of the hardest to see, and that's the Coqui franklin's baby. They are really, really, really tiny. It being the smallest franklin species we see regularly around here.
It is the James of franklin species.
Yes, I am the red, what's it, no,
Swainson's
profile of franklin species. And we're actually at the spot that a lot of you will know very well. I'll be back in a second.
Brent is coming back now, everybody, fear not. He's just going to fetch a prop while we wait for Jamie to change her tyre.
Still quite smelly.
And quite heavy.
Yes, it is the buffalo that the Imkahumas managed to catch very close to us. So we're going to pop it on the ground here, and maybe now, since we can get off the vehicle, I keep trying to show you these little carrion beetles, but they keep escaping. So even though this carcass is over a month old now in the skull, these carrion beetles and whatnot will go into this brain cavity and feed off the brains, and even still feeding off all these little bits of sinew and things that are still here.
I must tell you, everybody, that despite the age of the skull, as Brent says, the smell is still fairly appalling. It is singeing what little hair remains on my head.
And see, James is just a bit sensitive.
That's actually fascinating.
There we go. There's those carrion beetles.
What goes in where? Have you got a beetle?
Yeah. Look at them there. Oh no, those are older than carrion beetles. There is a carrion beetle there as well. The closest thing you guys might know to these is woodlice. But this is a very specific type of what are they? Arthropods. Yeah.
They're arthropods.
And I've only ever seen them on carcasses. Oh, one fell through. But they're all in this sinew, and they're actually eating. I mean, not even a hyena would chew on that, but there's still a whole host of different species. We can see there's quite a lot of little ants, and an enormous amount of these little arthropods. And I'm probably going to have to do some research to find out a bit more about them.
Of course, Brent says, when he says that they're older than the carrion beetles, he doesn't mean the individuals. He can't
Yes,
actually
right.
tell individual age. He means in terms of evolutionary time. Woodlice are some of the most ancient of all animal life that still exists on the planet.
It is
Marvelous.
fascinating. But I think if we try to get, there's one that's not moving too much.
You can see that Brent Leo Smith is totally unafraid, of course, to touch rotting meat. I wouldn't suggest that you go and try this at home should you find a carcass or some roadkill where you live. But Brent will make sure to wash his hands as soon as we get home.
Well, actually, after we go off camera, I'm going to wipe them all over James's face.
Yes, what a lovely thought. But
He thinks I'm joking.
see any the horn moths?
No, we actually stopped here to check for the horn moths, and I said we're not going to see any of them till it's rained a bit more. So we're going to have to definitely come back and check, and we'll be looking for those. Almost looks like someone's taken a drill and put these perfect little round holes into the boss. Oh, we do have one of my favorite little creatures, a jumping spider, who I think is hunting all the other inhabitants. And he's just there. I don't want to put my finger too close, he might jump.
I'm going to try and zoom in on him, but everybody...
You see him?
There we go, there's the spider, look.
They are definitely one of my favorite little creatures. And for quite a while, I had one living in Jigga. And when the flies were very bad, he actually was sitting in a lion sighting, a very flat lion sighting, and he popped up onto the dashboard and grabbed a fly. So we had a kill on the car.
Look at him there, isn't that magnificent?
He's definitely hunting all the other
Oh,
inhabitants.
did you see him jump? He's gone. Oh no, there he is, he's back.
He almost looks like he might be stalking an ant. So as we say, even a dead animal is its sort of own mini ecosystem in itself. So while we continue to see what else we can find in what's left of this buffalo, I think Jamie is going to show you about her pit crew skills, and obviously they challenge the Ferrari pit crew in Formula 1, and we will be back in a little bit.
So guys, welcome back, and as you can see, we have managed to get the vehicle jacked up. I would say that probably the hardest part of this whole experience was getting the tire iron, which is this thing, out from underneath the seat. But we are now jacked up and probably ready to get going. I'm just going to get the one tire off and the other tire on. Now this is a brand new spare tire, which means I had to jack it quite high to make space for it. And the thing about this situation is that The wildebeest can't be on the car to direct the camera on this kind of sloped ground. Here we go. All 5 wheel nuts are off. One very pop tyre is now off the car. Oop, and about to roll down Buffelshoek hook cut line. Have I got this? Yes. Here we go. Tire is on. Wheel nuts are almost back on. Whoa, car is slid. You okay there, Wildy? Just making sure the wheel nuts are tight enough to hold this wheel on. It's the unfortunate nature of soft sand. From underneath the car, so at the moment it's a bit of a tense situation, and we're going to cut back across to James and Brent, and I'll catch up with you as soon as I've got this wheel back on the car.
No one knows.
Hello everybody,
Welcome back.
2 of us in frame now.
As James has very cleverly used the foot rail of the packing vehicle to set up the shot.
Yes.
And
Sorry. We were just discussing while we sat here what we were going to tell you about this buffalo, and it of course smells like the bowels of hell where we're sitting right now, and I thought maybe we'd give a little discussion on the lions and where they happen to be, because they're set off on Djuma, they're not on Arathusa, and they're not anywhere on the farms just to the south of us. So, it's the first cicada.
oh no, yeah, no, I heard them last night. Sorry, we did all this morning. Sorry.
So the cicadas are calling. Wonderful beetles, at least bugs. We're going to get on to them, talking about them now, but I'm just going to quickly give you an update on the lions. So, the Nkuhuma Pride, we think, are off north of Buffelshoek, probably in the Manyeti. I think they're very nervous about being probably attacked by Birmingham boys. And remember, now they've lost 3 lionesses. One of them we haven't seen being killed, the young sub-adult, but she's missing, and we don't know where she is. And then the Matimbas are now on Londolozi, which is probably, as the crow flies, about 10 kilometers from where we're sitting now. We don't know what they're doing there. It's certainly not in their traditional territory, and I think they're suffering for their lives. And interestingly enough, earlier today, 3 what we think were Birmingham males were tracked down into Mala Mala, possibly hot on the trail of those Matimba males.
Now the Matimba's in a really bad spot, because just south of where they are is another coalition of 4 males. There are quite a lot they are.
Yes.
Have you've seen them?
I haven't seen them, I just know of them. The four-ways males, I think they're called.
Oh,
And they're four-ways males.
Quite apt.
Yes.
And the Nkuhumas, no one knows at the moment.
No.
We think they're either hiding somewhere in Buffelshoek and no one's been able to try to find them yet, or they have gone to the Manuleti.
Yeah. I think more likely into the Manuleti. So just to recap, for those of you who perhaps don't know, one female killed in February. Where was that? Do you remember?
Buffelshoek, as far as I know.
Well, another one killed on Torchwood just the other month, I think in June, or maybe early July. And then a young Sab-Aralt has gone missing. And just after they had killed a buffalo on Buffelshoek and were chased off it by a few of the Birmingham boys. So at least by one Birmingham boy. And I suspect that he was killed by him somewhere in Buffelshoek about 3 or 4 days ago. So that's a bit sad for them, but that is the way of things with the lions. Now, there is no fireside chat today, in case you were wondering. I suppose where we're sitting here in this green cloud of carrion-infested air, this might sort of substitute a little bit for a fireside chat. And let's perhaps just these bugs that I'm hearing now, the cicadas. I'm not sure if this fairly basic microphone that we're talking to you through is picking them up. But the cicada is a fascinating bug. It's not a beetle, known as a Christmas beetle, but it isn't in fact a beetle at all. No, it is a bug, a member of the order Hemiptera, and they have come out of the ground after an enforced year of celibacy, dwelling on the roots of various trees, probably in this area some terminalia trees. They've come out, lions, calling, not attacking.
That's quite close to our boundary.
So we'll take a drive up. I'm afraid in this vehicle we're not going to be able to do it at a great speed, but we'll take a look and see if the tracks aren't coming this way. I actually think they sound north of us. I think they're probably a little bit north of us, but we'll go and have a quick look. What do you think?
Definitely. I'd say probably a bit north of Buffelshoek
Yeah.
Dam, that area.
So we might be lucky. Anyway, we'll have a quick discussion of the cicadas, then we'll cross back to Jamie eventually, and we'll head off and see if we can't pick up those lions quickly before the end of the drive. So those cicadas, those are males that are singing now, and they're singing after a year of enforced celibacy. They are singing their lungs out in hopes of trying to attract a female. This, of course, is why I sing, Brent.
Yes.
Yes. I have, of course, do not sing as well as the cicada, and I find myself, of course, alone in the world, but that is just the way of things.
It's okay, Jim.
Thank you, Brent, for your comfort.
But also, I think, as far as I know, the most common cicada species we get in this area is the red-backed cicada, and hopefully we will be able to catch one for you at some point to show them to you. I've been bombarded by cicadas driving through Mopani woodland in Botswana in a closed Land Cruiser, and one manages to get under your seat somewhere, and it is very, very loud in a small confined space.
Yes. Of course, the most amusing thing about a cicada, of course, is that when they fly, when you're a guide, of course, you drive around at night and the tracker sits on the front with a spotlight, and that spotlight, of course, attracts beetles and bugs and various other insects to it. And the most amusing thing, of course, is that because the light is at basically guest height on the back of the vehicle, the squeals and screams coming from the back of the vehicle make guiding at night a profoundly amusing and wonderfully entertaining activity. Bear in mind also that it is something of an adventure sport, because a dung beetle can fly. I've clocked one flying at about 60 kilometers per hour. Now, a dung beetle coming the opposite direction, if you're doing 30, equals about 90 kilometers an hour, and a solid dung beetle pounding into your forehead at 90 kilometers an hour, well, that's just not very pleasant at all.
Well, I actually managed to give my brother a black eye with the dung beetle. I was late picking up my father from an airstrip in a camp in Botswana, and I was going quite fast, and he was sitting on the tracker seat, and a very large dung beetle hit him flat in the eye, and my mother thought I'd been beating my younger brother, which I have done, but not that time.
Yes. So be aware, the next time you come to Africa, watch out for dung beetles flying at 90 kilometers an hour into your face. On that note, we are going to cross to Jamie. I hope she has two still beautiful eyes and no black ones. We'll see you a little bit later. We probably will be done for the rest of the day, but we're going to quickly try and find those lions. If we don't, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, and thank you for putting up with our amateur attempts. See ya.
Welcome back, and as you can see, we are back on the road once again with a changed tyre and one very flat one attached to the back of the vehicle. Now I'd love to know exactly where that flat tyre came from, because it only just happened after we'd come past and through Buffelshoek Dam, which is odd because I did a lot of off-roading earlier to that, but not before then, or not after that. So I don't know what it was that caught out our tyre, but we did have just a moment where luckily I'd managed to get the bolts back on the wheel as I'd changed it, and I was just in the process of tightening them when the vehicle and when the jack slipped, which wasn't really ideal. But we're okay, we are back up and running. It wasn't too difficult. It's probably the warmest I've been all day. That is how it goes. And now we are once again on the search for something to show you guys and to teach you a little bit about. Whoop. Avalanche. Goes my hat. I still say the hardest part of that entire experience was levering the tire lever out, or the wheel spanner out from underneath the seat where it had somehow got jammed. Luckily these Land Rovers, the bottom part of the seat comes off, so we're able to get it off. So Pam has made an interesting point that changing a tyre must be part of the interview process at Wild Earth. And you laugh, but when I was doing my first level guiding assessment, one of the deals was that if you got a flat tyre, you had to be able to change it in under 10 minutes, barring anything unforeseen happening, like the car rolling off the jack or the tyre iron getting stuck. And we used to practice on a fairly regular basis, because if you do have a vehicle full of safari guests, it's important that if you do need to get them off the vehicle, you can change the tyre as fast as possible and get them back out on their safari as quickly as you can. So although it wasn't part of my interview process at Wild Earth, and I must say I'm very glad I didn't have a flat tyre during my Wild Earth interview, because I was so nervous as it was. I probably didn't need that little addition. Now I will say that during that entire process, Liam was incredibly helpful in assisting me, and he was responsible for many of the different processes that were happening, and he's still got to be the one who is in contact with the outside sources to let me know what's going on outside of our little bubble. So I think Liam did a fantastic job. Definitely a handy assistant to have in times of trouble, and one that I would certainly rely upon again. So thank you for your help, Wildebeest. His best contribution, which was absolutely hilarious, was we were looking for rocks to put under the wheels so that the car didn't slide any further forward, and he just looked at me and went, "You do know this is the Sabi Sands, right?" There was not a single rock anywhere to be found in the place that we were. It was very funny. Now, I'm sure that many of our regular viewers will know that we usually have a fireside chat on a Sunday evening, and we won't be doing one this week, clearly, since we are still out and about. We are going to just extend the broadcast by an extra half an hour and continue from there. But this is not going to be the situation all the time. Fireside chat will be happening next week Sunday. So you can tune in and listen to us, the various presenters, discuss the highlights of our weeks. Now, Kathleen, you were wondering if I could hear them from where I was. I didn't, but I was a little bit distracted. I'm just driving around the back of the Djuma waterhole, so I will be keeping my eyes peeled. If they were calling, I don't think they were calling close to where Liam and myself were stuck with our flat. We'll keep an eye out for lands. I mentioned a couple of days ago on one of my drives that it's been so dry for the big rains that we had that my lips had started cracking, and apparently there was blood all over my front tooth while I was smiling at you. So I do apologize for that. It does seem to keep happening to me over the last few days. I must get hold of some lip balm. Come on, Karula, this is one of your favorite areas. Must be hiding somewhere in the shadows. Favorite animals have changed since I started working out in the bush, and the answer is, oh, that's a difficult one. No, probably not. I think my favorite animals are still the same. I still love rhino. I've loved rhino since I was 8 years old. They were my favorite animal then, and I still think they're my favorite animal. And I still have a very soft spot for honey badgers. But I would certainly say that obviously my understanding and my respect has grown immensely the more time I spend out living with all of them out here. And I have plenty of stories to tell you when I do see you, and I might even wear the hat. Sorry, Paula. And I mentioned that I have a rather chapped, bleeding lip at the moment. Nothing too serious, I'll probably survive. But it is slightly uncomfortable. And Diane wants to know if there are any natural substances I could use out in the bush. And that's a very good question, and I'm sure there is a certain aloe that I could probably use. Although some of them can be very, very foul tasting, and I'd prefer not to apply it to my lips, because I can guarantee I'm going to lick them and get that taste. But I'm sure that there are aloes that I could apply. I'm trying to think what else I could use. There's a lot of natural painkillers, but I'd need something that really keeps the moisture in. That's a very good question. Sure, there must be something. I'll think about it. I'll look that up and get back to you. And I'm sure that if I can't find the answer, I'm sure that Brent, Scott, or James will have an answer for me as well. Continue our search and we listen to the various crickets that are out and about. We will also, sorry little Steenbok, we will also soon be hearing the cicadas. And Wendy from Chicago, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You wanted to know if we get the 17-year cicada, and I honestly am not too sure. I'll have to go and have a look, and I'm sure that some of you out there might have an answer to Wendy's question, and we of course always love to hear from you. And Wendy would also like to know what if we have any updates on the Styx females, the Styx Pride members, including the mother of and the cub, the one surviving cub from the Birmingham boy attack. Honestly, I haven't heard very much since the rains. Now I know that they had moved, that they were south of our boundary, and that one Styx female had been killed, but I'm still getting up to date on what exactly is happening. And of course, with all of the rain, tracking and finding them can be particularly difficult because, as I mentioned before, the ground gets so compacted. And I've been listening all evening on the radio for updates as to what is happening out there in terms of lion sightings, but so far not much has been seen. I did hear that the Nkuhumas had crossed through Arathusa and moved to Elephant Plains. So, although I thought they'd gone east, they have actually gone west. But I'm afraid, Wendy, at the moment, that is all I can update you on. As soon as we do know, though, we will, of course, share that information with everybody else. Whoop, scrub here. Oh, such a beautiful evening. And the wonderful thing about the smell after the first rains is that it's so incredibly clear and clean, and it gets that wonderful, I don't know, I always think of it as the distinctive bushveld smell. Definitely one of my favorite times of day. quarantine clearings is very, very quiet at the moment. If you're wondering why I didn't head across to the hyena den, it was actually getting, after our tire changing experience, it was a little bit too dark. Now I could have gone there, but I, personal approach, prefer not to spotlight the young cubs, especially the smallest one that is at that den site. And there was no guarantees that the adults were going to be around, and it's not as accessible as the old hyena den was. It's a little bit more tricky to get in. It's very, very thick. It makes a lot of noise and a lot of disruption. So I'd rather not do that at this, as it was getting dark. I'd rather have been in the den site as it got dark. So we will just have to follow up with those hyenas on another live safari, probably tomorrow morning. Mentioned, although they have gone very quiet, that we heard the crickets calling. You know, we can still hear them maybe a little bit, but we still haven't heard the cicadas. And I know that Brent and James mentioned that the males will have been waiting a year in order to come out and mate. And Matt was wondering if the species that we get in Africa are the same ones that he knows about, and whether or not they can sometimes wait up to 14 years before they emerge to mate. And I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it's similar to what Wendy was asking about the 17-year cicada. I'm stopping for a bush baby, but I think he's going to duck away. Oh, there he goes. Nope. Unfortunately, just a little bit too far away. I don't think we're going to manage to catch him. No, he's coming closer. Let's just stop and wait a moment and see if maybe he comes through. You can see the bushes moving where he jumped. Gone right down close to the ground, and I think there he is. Little eyes shone through, but unfortunately a little bit too thick and a little bit too far away. Now I know that Brent had an absolutely amazing bush baby sighting. I think it was not yesterday but the day before. And I saw the pictures from some of that, with a little bush baby sticking its head out. Very, very cute, but we need to see if we can find some that are in less thick bush that we can show you. Our smallest little nocturnal primate in the Sabi Sands. Nice and slowly through the dip. You never know what might be hiding in drainage lines. Now, I had a question earlier from Alex, who went to university with me, and Alex and I both did law together in the UK. And Diane was wondering if I would ever use my law degree to help in conservation at all. And the answer is, I would absolutely love to. It will always come in useful. I was very, very lucky to be in the position that I was in to get that degree. However, I don't necessarily think that it will be in terms of being a practicing lawyer, but being able to build up my knowledge base, which I really need to do, about environmental law in Africa and internationally, would be something I would be very keen on doing. I was definitely not the world's best lawyer. I was not particularly astounding at it, but I did work very hard at it and I got better. But I don't think I will ever be a practicing lawyer, but to be able to use the gift that I was given in terms of being able to have the education I had, and I was very fortunate to have it. I think that being able to use it to help the various conservation or help address the various conservation issues that face our world, I would absolutely love to do so. And you can see how absolutely pitch black it is tonight. The moon is not out and about. I just want to say a big thank you to you all for joining us, and thank you for VM for his wonderful camera work and as well as his tire changing help. And it's been wonderful to have you all joining us. A big thank you to Lou and Tara in FC. We will catch you tomorrow for the sunrise safari, so join us then. Have a wonderful day.